Welcome to another edition of Minot Talk here at the Dakota. It's Tuesdays, 9 a.m. We go live every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 a.m. Well, almost. We missed last Thursday. This time, there's no Kyler, of course. He made an announcement last week, so we kicked him off the show. But we are very thankful to be joined by a special guest, Alderman Paul Pitner. Thanks for coming on today.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. You guys went and did something crazy. Had a city council meeting that went for an hour and a half or so. It wasn't too bad. Maybe slightly longer.
No, it wasn't, which was nice. My wife's out of town, so I'm solo dad, so I was able to relieve Grandma a little bit earlier than expected last night. So yeah, it was a nice little treat. We like to sprinkle those in every once in a while, keep people on their toes.
Of course, you guys had this special one beforehand, so maybe that offsets a little bit. How do you plan though? Like these are the things that just get overlooked, and I know it's just part of the sacrifice of. When you run for the job, maybe you don't anticipate it, but you realize, oh yeah, this is part of it. How long do you anticipate a city council meeting going?
You don't. You don't. You just go in there, and when I left the house last night, my mother-in-law came over to watch the kids, and she's like, "Is this going to be an 11 o'clock one?" I said, "You never know.
Yep.
You never know. I mean, you get personal appearances even that get in there. You talk about 5 minutes per personal appearance. You get you get 6 people in there that want to speak. They use 5 minutes. That's a half hour right there. Right. So yeah, you just never know. You never know, and you never know when a good discussion is going to pop up on an item unexpectedly.
Exactly.
So again, it's anybody's guess.
Yeah. Well, and one of those items that came up maybe towards the end of city council, and it's one that you brought up, so I'll have you break it down a little bit. Is some adjustments to the alcohol bidding. The bidding for the alcohol licenses.
Yeah.
Kind of break what your goal was there. I know it passed unanimously. I can't talk this morning. I was struggling even while we were chatting. So it's going to be a good show today. But break that down a little bit.
So we had in the second meeting, our last regular city council meeting, we had given staff direction. We have repossessed essentially a liquor license, one that was sold in the last census. And a little bit of history on that. The last time any license was actually sold or issued by the city was back, I think, in the 80s, going back. So we haven't done it in a while, outside of post last census. So we had, in the way we had done that was sealed bid, minimum bid of $100,000.
Because these were brand new licenses.
Yep.
At the census.
Yep. After the census, population had increased to the point where we could issue 4 new licenses. So we went the route of, which I was against. I wanted to stand a committee up back then to see if, hey, is this the right way we should be doing this? Mm-hmm. So we issued those licenses at $100,000 minimum. In which you had a wide swath of interest, right? You had the Targets of the world that came in hot and heavy. They needed one. That's their business model, national brand, and then you had some local guys, entrepreneurs that are like, hey, I think it was $100,005 was another one. Like, hey, I want one, but I don't want to overpay for this. Right. And this is I'm going to just meet the threshold. So, after we had done that, we kind of, repeated that process, at our last council meeting. And then after that council meeting, I kind of got to thinking, reflecting on the committee that we were on, and I actually had a sidebar conversation with Alderman Mike Bless. I'm like, I was laying in bed last night. I was like, gosh, a live auction might be a better way to go. Again, when you talk about transparency, you talk about bringing people to the table,
right?
Maybe that would be a better way to go. So I had talked to the city attorney and the city clerk on reconsidering that. So what we had done is we had changed it to a live auction, for full transparency. There's no sealed bid that where it says, hey, this guy got it for $5,000 over what I bid or $1 over what I bid. How did they know what I, just take it out of the equation, right? Just take it. It's going to be broadcast in council chambers. There was some questions on who was going to do the live auction. So I don't know if city finance director or city clerk or myself.
We need a real auctioneer.
Or the mayor.
So they need to pull out the real auctioneer voice.
We thought about that. We've thought about that. And I'm not going to do my best auctioneer impression by any means. But again, just bringing transparency to the whole process. Putting it at the minimum just so we can really see where these values. There was a wide opinion of what these values were worth. We had, and again, a lot of emotions there. I'm not casting stones. It was anywhere from these are worth $200,000. These are worth $400,000.
Right. Yep.
Is that accurate? I mean, we're about to find out. So again, I think it's just when you know better, do better. So
right. My follow-up question on that is around what you were saying there. Do you think this is going to provide the live auction? Will provide the level of transparency which is necessary. Do you think there'll also be something that is provided where you're able to get an even better landscape of how interested the public is whether the private entrepreneurs, the national corporations, whoever they are interested in these licenses? Do you think you'll also bring that, or not really anymore?
Potentially, right? The difficult part with the cap, right? And we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but again, you can't talk, so maybe we will. So when you talk about, a license becoming available, that was part of the committee work and discussion that we had. A license became available. We're going to advertise it for 60 days.
Yep.
That means if someone has an idea, a business concept, they've got 60 days to get their ducks in order to find a place. Whether they're going to buy a commercial space, lease a commercial space, work on numbers, get with a bank, get with investors. That's a very tight window for anybody that has interest in this. Mm-hmm. So again, and that's just the byproduct of a cap system, which is the direction the council wanted to go. So that's the way we're going to go.
Yeah.
But to me, it's when you put $100,000 minimum on something, it's like, okay, well, you get real uninterested real quick for entrepreneurs, someone who's fresh out of college that says, hey, I've got a good idea.
Yeah.
I think I can make this go. I'm going to go talk to my buddy. I'm going to go talk to my buddy's parents. I'm going to talk to my parents. I'm going to talk to my buddy's parents. I'm going to talk to a group of buddies. One guy's got a really good job out of college and has got some coin and wants to invest. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can make something happen. And that's the type of chances I want people to be able to take.
Yep.
And I think this lends itself a little bit to that because, again, it right now, we set a minimum of $1 is where we're starting. So we'll see what happens. And
if it goes well, do you see it kind of maybe parlaying into the other bids? If there's more bids that come down the line, just kind of have it be the new precedent?
If new licenses become available, we're talking 8 years or 6 years from now, 4 years from now. That would happen again. Potentially, I've never liked the closed bid. I don't think the city should be making money off of these things. It's not a revenue stream. That's a bonus check for the city, right? If a license becomes available and we say $100,000, well, you can't count on that money for anything.
Right.
That's just a Christmas bonus, if you will. I'm not trying to make light of those dollars coming in, but if you have $100,000 comes in, but you're not going to get that for another 10 years if the community grows, should the city be in the business of making money off of those things?
It's fair. Another topic that came up that I think is kind of a big one on a very laid-back city council meeting. That's the sidewalk assessment fees that came up. And this was nearly, or it passed 4-3. And so basically this is just going and adding a timeline to when people need to get their sidewalks repaired. Lance Meyer, city engineer, said that timeline is a state law, but it doesn't specify time. And so there's this unwritten rule. So there's this discussion on how long should owners have once it's been brought to their attention. Meyer said that they go when it gets brought up. And this is the interesting part about it, this whole deal. And I want to dive into this part. A lot of times it sounds like a lot of times that these are brought up by somebody saying, hey, I was walking on the sidewalk and it needs repaired.
Yep.
And so then it gets reported to the city. And so then the city goes out and inspects it. It's like, yeah, that's true. It does need repaired. And then they do a good job of going around the entire blocks, making sure that the whole area we don't have, so it's not targeted, which is great.
Yep.
Okay. And so first off, let's talk about that. Timeline, that did pass passed with the timeline policy, which gives people a little bit of time to get that fixed. But kind of what's your viewpoint on this?
Yeah, so the timeline, what we did is we extended it basically to 2 construction seasons.
Right.
We gave 2 construction seasons, and you're absolutely right. So Lance, we're responsive in that the city's responsive in that someone calls and says, and again, whether there's a sign down, whether there's a limb that falls, if there's a hazard anywhere, right, or a nuisance, you call it with grass, whatever. We respond to that. We send somebody out, and like you said, we do the whole area. A lot of those sidewalks installed at the same time. Developments happened.
Right.
Something heaves. So then we go out, we mark it, and then it goes into the process of needing to be repaired. We give essentially a full construction season for that repair to happen. My mindset on that, which again, you want to give 2 construction season, that's fine.
Right.
You've got small children, I've got small children.
Yep.
If I come home on Friday and I say, hey, you guys, this weekend, you're going to clean your rooms. You're going to do a deep dive. You're going to clean your rooms, pulling all the stuff you stuff under your bed, all the stuff out of your closet. This weekend, I want it done before Sunday night. When do you think they do it?
Yeah, like right before Sunday night. Yeah.
Right, Sunday night, right?
After Sunday dinner.
So again, and that's fine. It gets done.
Yeah.
But or you talk about a tax deadline. When do people file their taxes? Probably pretty close to the deadline, right? We push the
October
envelope.
15th.
Yeah. You
File the extension.
Exactly. So for me, my mindset in voting against the extension was, I believe, it used to be 30 days. Like Lance Meyer pointed out, like we used to go out and say, hey, this sidewalk is in disrepair. It needs to be fixed. It's a hazard. And now we give a full construction season. My mindset on it is that if you give them a cookie, they're going to ask for a glass of milk to go with it, right?
Yep.
So my mindset on that was, I think a full construction season to get a contractor lined up is adequate. They do have the option to let the city do it. We'd change the fees so there's no interest charge or anything like that. So that's where I was coming from on my no vote, is that I think this is reasonable. For anybody that is given notice, proper notice, and again, it just, if you give them 2 years, they're going to take 2 years to do it.
They can take the full amount of time.
And like Lance had said, we're talking about safety hazards. We're talking about tripping hazards. We're talking about kids riding their bikes or rollerblading or whatever it is.
So this is the part that's interesting to me, and it goes into a bigger issue. So this is going to be out of left field. I'm sorry. But it's an issue that comes up when it's reported by other citizens. And I know this has been talked before, so you've heard this argument before, and it's not really an argument. It's just I want to hear more about this. I made the joke, I believe it was last week, about like snow removal, because I was out of town. I knew it snowed while I was gone. I do shovel my own snow. I was like, there's a chance someone's going to stop by my house, and it's been 3 days, and they're going to take a picture, and they're going to submit it into the app, and someone's going to come out, and the city will probably work with me and be like, okay, we get it, clean it up, right? They're not going to be, but the whole concept where you're able to go and kind of like report these things, does that create an uncomfortable environment, do you think, or is that fair because there's no way the city could monitor all 10, 20,000 homes that are in the city of Minot and all that?
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Yeah,
right.
To it all.
There's potential for any of that. Is there potential for anybody to abuse the system and target their neighbors, or they don't like their neighbors, or whatnot? Yeah, absolutely. I've got a neighbor whose dog comes out and barks at 3 a.m. It was barking at 3 a.m. last night. Woke me up.
Nice.
I can either, turn the sound machine on, or play some music, and if it becomes habitual. Yeah, then it'll be an issue, and then it's something that can get reported, and people can take the next step. And again, like you said, city staff, they're good people. Right. There's common sense will prevail and be like, okay, this person's calling all the time, sitting by their window, waiting for 3 days to go by, and if the neighbor's not out there and the sidewalk's not clean, or they're over there with a ruler measuring their neighbor's grass or the fence, being like, hey, it's too tall, got it. Yeah. Yes, and again, so the city staff is going to work with people, and again, common sense is going to prevail 9 times out of 10, because city staff are also your neighbors.
Absolutely.
They're also the people that are living and working in the community.
Right.
But if there are people that are abusing the system and not taking care of their properties or not taking care of their responsibilities, then it is, within the purview of the city to correct those.
Right.
So, and we've seen those things, right? And I sorry to cut you out, John. We've seen those things where people yards become filled with trash. Yeah. Right. And again, those are extreme situations, but how do those start out? Yep. When they've got 1,000 bags of trash and 10 broken cars, how did that start out?
Right.
With 1 bag of trash.
Exactly.
1 broken car. Yep. And then all of a sudden, we just let it go. Yep. So there has to be a mechanism to correct that behavior and address that.
It's fair. Other than that, some highlights from the city council meeting had short public appearance. Some issues about, or some perspectives on Robert's Rules of Order was brought up. And then there was also, you kind of addressed it earlier, but Allison Red from Western Dakota Energy Association was there. Before the meeting, there was a vote on the Mulberry Loop and that purchase there, and that failed in a 3-3 vote. You can talk about all you want, but I do want to kind of switch gears because there was something else that broke right around the time city council opened. It was said, one of the news agencies in Minot reported that Mike Hayes isn't running. He's decided not to run for reelection. And of course, you've decided not to run for reelection. And so that's two of the 3 incumbents that are down now. Talk us through, I know you made a long post and I read it, but talk us through the decision not to run for city council.
Yeah, so, going back, let's go back 4 years ago when I ran for my current term. I was of the mindset, this is going to be my last go.
Okay.
You get, a year in, 2 years in, you're like, Okay, maybe I will. I don't know. Right? Then it becomes kind of blurry. You blur the lines of your decision. Hey, things are going well. I like that. You get 3 years in. Even before making this decision to not run, the person that probably didn't believe me the most outside of myself was my wife.
Yeah.
And actually she had given me her blessing to be, people were starting to reach out, right? The news, the news stations were starting to reach out. Like, hey, you gonna run? Hey, it's you can get signatures. So and so's announced. Are you gonna run? You'd always give that very political response, like undecided.
Yeah, right.
I'm still weighing my options.
Yes.
And truthfully, I probably was. In my mind, I was like, God, I wouldn't mind doing it. I wouldn't mind doing it. And honestly, the moment, I know the exact moment when I decided I wasn't going to run. We put our kids to bed and we put our 2 youngest to bed. They share a room. They go to bed first, 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Then my son, he likes to peter around, but he gets to bed not long after that. And then my daughter, she'll burn the midnight oil if she can. But again, she's the last one to go to bed. And that's kind of our time. She's my oldest, our oldest, my wife.
Right.
And in her room, and she's very organized. She's got her calendar. She loves to write. She's got her easel, and she's writing. She's got her calendar. She's like, Dad, I'm so busy this week. I've got practice on this day. I've got a game on this day. I got a tournament this weekend. I was going to miss like 3 of those 4 things.
Wow.
For whether it be council meetings, I was like, you know what? I'm not willing to miss those things. When I think of, do I want to go to a council meeting?
Right.
Do I want to go to a council workshop? Or do I want to hang out with my kids, the coolest people I know?
Yep.
That was the exact moment where I'm like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't really tell my wife anything about my decision outside of like, some of that stuff, just to kind of drag her along, just kind of twist the knife a little bit. But she told me, she's like, Paul, if you want to do it again, you have my full support.
Okay.
Which I was a little surprised, which made it even a little bit more difficult. I'm like, well, if you're gonna let me,
right?
But maybe it was a test and I passed. So no, it's time.
Yep.
Whether it be with my family, 2 of my kids, when I ran, would be coming up on 8 years ago. My son was a year old, not even a year old, my oldest son. 2 of my kids have never known me not to be on city council.
Wow.
Have never known me not to have to leave on every other Monday night to go to a meeting.
Yeah. That's kind of a bummer. Like, it's cool, but it's kind of a bummer too.
Yeah. It's been fun, and they've supported me. My wife doesn't so much like watching the meetings.
Right.
My kids, they don't mind it, especially when it's around their birthday. I can give them a little shout out. Or I'll text my wife like, hey, turn the meeting on, additional miscellaneous items.
Right,
Throw them a little shout out for their birthday, something like that. It's kind of neat, but when you say like, hey guys, hey, we got to get going. I got to go. I got a meeting. You got another one, So again, it'll be nice to know, or have the opportunities to coach a rec league soccer game, for the kids and be available to them and just put the hat of dad on. And then, on top of that, I've got my businesses.
Yep.
I'm an entrepreneur. I've got my small businesses that I want to see grow, or I want to start new ones, and take those chances. Mine, it's a great place to do business. I want to take advantage of those things as just Joe Blow.
Right. Yeah.
So
absolutely. So as you step away, what do you have any concerns about stepping away? I guess it seems like when you go and you're on city council, you're one individual, and that gets pointed out, and you have to work with the group to get stuff done. But there's also stuff that you've fought for, and there's stuff that you've put a lot of sweat, energy into. Are there any concerns as you step away from city council, or something that might go in a different direction or whatever that you've helped?
No, because that's the beauty of where we live. That's and it's America. That's USA, right? And
Exactly.
We live in a representative democracy that if I felt strongly enough, I could run again.
Yep.
That was my choice. And I have that choice. And just to even have that choice is a gift. And if somebody else feels strongly, they can run. And again, I represent a small, and I've had a number of people, countless people reach out, hey, thank you for running. Thank you for your time. Thank you for representing the city of Minot. Wish you were running again. Yeah. And I'd say, hey, you can go get a petition and get signatures. I would never do that.
Why not?
So again, it is a sacrifice. For anybody to do it, anybody who's willing to put their name on the ballot, I've got nothing but respect for. Obviously, share this little story. When the last election cycle, when Scott, Rob, and Mike got elected, Scott Samuelson had reached out to me, and we had our differences of opinion, within the public realm during meetings. And Scott had reached out to me like, hey, Paul, could can you meet with me? Mm-hmm. I said, yeah, sure. I said, what do you want to meet about? He's like, I just want to meet with you. So, okay, well, let's meet. I said, we have council tonight. I said, let's meet, at City Hall, I'll be there. So we stepped into one of the conference rooms and we had a candid conversation, right?
Yep, right.
We didn't agree on everything,
yep.
but he saw where I was coming from, and I'd heard earlier
yep.
that day that he had got a petition.
Gotcha.
That he was thinking about running. And I said, I heard you're running.
Yeah.
He says, where'd you hear that? I said, little bird flew by and told me. And I said, if you got a petition, I'd like to sign it.
Yeah.
He pulled it out of his bag.
Gotcha.
And I said, I got nothing but respect for people that'll put their name on a ballot.
Yeah.
Whether I agree with you or
right.
not, that discourse and that debate has to be constructive.
Yep.
And it has to happen in a public forum.
Right.
And that's again, that's the beauty of where we live in. Have there been things that I have fought for that will go a different direction? Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. But if people don't like that or they want it to go the other way, there's another election in 2 years from now.
Absolutely.
That people can put their names on, or have people agreed with everything I've done? Absolutely not. Have some people agreed? Absolutely.
That's the thing.
So again, we live in. It was told to me when I first got into serving on boards and whatnot, and I grew up doing that stuff. I grew up, student council. I was involved in that stuff. When I first moved back to Minot, I actually served in the Rice Lake Recreational Service District out at Rice Lake. That's where my wife and I bought our first home. To be our first home, it flooded and we tore it down. Long story.
Yep.
But I got on the board there because we were in, the lake was in disrepair, right? Flooded sewer system, flooded roads. We had worked with the state to clean it up and through the legislative body and whatnot, and with the county. And now the lake is thriving, right? Mm-hmm. Because of what that board did. And it wasn't just me, it was, right. a lot of individuals. But a guy that I looked up to, a good friend of my father's, president of one of the credit unions here, he says, Paul, you aim for 51%. Anything on top of that is gravy. You look to satisfy the majority of people. See. You look and anything above that is great.
Right.
But you're never going to please everybody.
That's fair.
You're never going to please everybody. Mm-hmm. So all that I expect people to do when they run for office, and all that I've ever expected of myself and tried to do for myself is be honest. Mm-hmm. Be honest where I'm coming from. Be honest with my intentions. Be honest with my motivations. And that's all I hope for anybody that's running. Just be honest. Be who you are. Let people vote. That's who they're voting for. They're voting for you, right? They're voting for not you. I hope maybe you're putting a petition in. But when they're voting for me, I want to just be honest with who I am and where I'm coming from and my mindset, my viewpoints.
Yeah.
So
no, that's good. Do we see any chance? There's only 2 people that I know of so far that are there's more petitions that are out than that, but there's 2 people that I confirmed that have announced that they're running for council. Any chance there's only 2 candidates? There's 3 seats that we see some Brett Favre action. We say pulling my name out of retirement.
Not for me. Not for me. On top of that, right? So I don't even know what that process would be because we've had the vacated seats from someone winning a mayoral election.
Yep, right.
Whether that was, Sean Sitma did that, Tom Ross did that. Right. Boy, what does that look like? I don't know what our ordinance and bylaws say. Is that just an appointment? Is that a special election? I would hope that it would just be an appointment. To make that seamless and just again, we saw what happens when you don't have a full council.
Oh, yeah.
It gets deadlocked on issues. And that's fine, right? We had that, you touched on the Mulberry Loop issue, right? That was a 3-3.
Yep.
It didn't pass.
Right.
And that's fine. But when you have repeated nights where it's just gosh, are we really doing anything here?
Right.
We're just, again, we talk about, it's a tie. It's a tie. You're kissing your sister, right? It's what are we doing? Mm-hmm. So I would hope that the council can be and again, it hasn't happened yet, but if it does get to that point, that it moves as seamlessly as possible to get a 7th member.
Right.
But if you're willing to go out and get 300 signatures, go through a campaign, put your name on a ballot, sit there and wait to see how the votes come in, you're kind of mentally prepared to be in it for 4 years.
Right.
If you're just looking for an appointment, man, this sounds good. I'll do the appointment.
That's fair.
That's a 4-year appointment.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a way. I think it would have to be that seat. You couldn't appoint one of the existing members to that 4-year term and give them a 2-year term. Yeah, that'd be interesting. It's not good, right? Yeah. And that's not good. And that's the thing. Iron sharpens iron. You want to see healthy discourse out there. You do want as many people to run as possible. Whether you agree with them or not, you want them to run because you want to hear what they're about. If you get to an appointment, it's like, and again, we've done it, right?
Yeah. You get this 60-second blip and you really don't know.
I'm trying to think now. Did every one of my elections, let's see, 2018, Sitma ran, we appointed Padre-Gula. And then we had, in mine, I ran again. I think that was, then Tom Ross won. Yep. And then we appointed Roscoe. And then there was the special election with him and Scott Burlingame. Gosh, I've served with a lot of great people, And again, you look at the swath of people that we had, the different opinions from the Sean Sitmas, the Tom Rosses, the Kerry Evans, Scott Burlingame, Roscoe Striley. I mean, a lot of great people in their own right and a lot of different walks of life, which is great. I don't know if we have that right now, that makeup on council so much, which would be nice to see a little bit of a different points of view.
Right.
But again, people got to put their names in the hat and run. So
we're going to go to a quick break. After the break, we're going to talk a little bit more about the current state of the city and kind of what the future looks like. So we'll be back right after this.
In the demanding world of oil and gas, precision, safety, and efficiency are non-negotiable. Unmanned operator drone services revolutionizes how you monitor, inspect, and manage your operations. With cutting-edge technology and expert operators, we deliver real-time data, detailed reports, and actionable insights for our valuable clients. Why risk the safety of your team or waste precious time? Our drones access even the most challenging areas with ease, reducing downtime and enhancing safety across your sites. We take the guesswork out of your projects by offering LiDAR, mapping, and inspection services so that your projects stay safe, on budget, and on time. Unmanned operator drone services, where technology meets safety, precision, and efficiency. Contact us today to elevate your operations. Yes, pun intended.
We are back after that. Continue on our discussion. It's been great having you on. Thank you for this. It's been very good. So as it'll be interesting. I anticipate some more people throwing their names into the ring. For the city stuff, do you see, as people do this, do you see what's the best way for someone to do it? Go individually or go on kind of like a ticket where you have 2 or 3 people on it kind of running together? What's the best way in your opinion? Well,
I'll say this from my own personal experiences. Someone did ask me, an individual did ask me to run again on a ticket, if I'd be interested in running on a ticket. I said no. Okay. I said, my opinions are of my own. Right. I don't know what you think. I don't care what you think until we get to the council, until we get to the council level and then we share our opinions then. Again, we got away from that with the ward system, right? When we had wards, we were looking for representational pockets from around the community. Yep. And we went to an at-large system to get a different swath of opinions. We want everybody, just because we live on the same street, doesn't mean we both can't be on council, because we might have very different opinions on things. I'll tell you right now, on my street, there's an array of different opinions, whether it be politically, socially, whatever it is, and that's great. Yep. So, and again, we can talk about the elephant in the room. We had our last election. There was a ticket. And again, can you do it? Sure. Yep. Do I believe all 3 of those individuals believe the exact same thing at the exact same time? If they do, I think that's a little dangerous. I don't believe you have a representative democracy then. Okay. You're just trying to stack the deck, in my opinion, which, again, can it be done? Sure. Is it smart? A little bit, right? But as a voter, I want to see people on an individual basis, not vote for this guy because vote for these 2 guys because I said this. Yeah. Or vote for that guy because I said this. Right. I want to know what each individual person knows and believes on their own merits. Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Interesting perspective with the ward system too, with the representation and all that. All right. So kind of switching gears a little bit, after the election, obviously, the city's going to continue to run. State of the city. Obviously, we're going to actually get one of the state of the cities, and we'll hear from the mayor and all that. But I'm just saying, from your perspective, we go and we hear about the 4-3 votes. We hear about the 3-3 votes that happened all last summer and all this stuff. And I think if people follow
city council a little bit right now, then the first thing that comes up is, man, what do you think about the contention? Or what do you think, they go to maybe the derogatory point of it. But as you are actually working in this and you leave and you hand the reins over to somebody else in your seat, what is your perspective of how the city is right now? Is it in a place where we're kind of in a touchy situation, or is the city of Minot in a good place as it continues to move forward?
City's going to be fine.
Yeah.
City's going to be fine.
Right.
People think that being on city council is some big honor. I mean, again, you voted in. It's great to represent citizens and all that stuff. You're just a normal guy.
Yeah.
Alderman Blessum kind of said it, in response to the Civil Service Commission a few meetings ago. Like, hey, we give some arbitrary citizens some information and ask them to make an opinion. And I kind of called them out on it. And I shouldn't say call them out. But I reminded them, like, hey, that's us.
Right. Yep.
That's us. I'm a gutter guy. I own a car wash.
Right. Yep.
I've got 4 kids at home. I went to college, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then other sides of the aisle, you've got a plumbing inspector.
Yep.
You've got a former computer guy.
Right.
You've had guys that are nonprofits. You've had guys that were, vice presidents of banks.
Mm-hmm.
That's the representative government that we live in. City's gonna be fine because we've got great staff. We've got, again, not all are great. Most are great.
Yep.
Right. We got, when you have 500 employees, 400 some employees. Yeah, you're going to have some
absolutely,
a wide variety of individuals, but the vast majority of our staff are great. The vast majority of our citizens are great.
Yeah.
The vast majority of our partnerships are great.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about Visit Minot, you talk about the Chamber, you talk about, Commission on Aging, Minot Area Council of the Arts. These partnerships that we have are in place, and they're so important because they're worrying about their little pocket, and they're carrying their weight.
Yeah.
They're carrying the load in their area of our community that needs to be moved forward.
Right.
So again, I think that when you look at all of those parts, they're greater than the sum, kind of thing. And when you look at all of those people moving projects forward and moving the best interests of Minot forward, it'd be very difficult for the passion that those groups and those individuals have to derail for a 7-person council to derail that good work. Mm-hmm. So Minot is prime with opportunity. It's ripe. Yeah. It's ripe for the picking. When it comes to the natural resources we have here. We talk about NAS coming online with water. We talk about natural gas pipelines. We talk about the pig iron plant.
Right.
Those are things that will change the trajectory of Minot forever.
Absolutely.
Not for a couple years, or hey, that might be nice. We're getting a Dunkin' Donuts, or we're getting
7 Brews.
Those are things that are going to just skyrocket us, to the next. And that groundwork has been laid by not this current council, not the past council, but councils all along the way.
Right.
Going back to the railroad days when Minot became the Magic City, by picking this location, by identifying our resources, by identifying NAS, and those that infrastructure and those investments in ourselves. So Minot's in a good spot.
So something that comes up with this is money. We can talk about the sales tax. You get into the weeds. You've heard it all. You've talked about it all. I think something that interesting though is, as we've made some resets to the budget over the last couple cycles, eventually there's going to be some changes that are going to have to come again with it because of reserves being used and everything. Is there any concern that Minot should have about that, about taxes being raised, or maybe even is this where economic development plays in and there's some potential revenue sources or something that can be expanded on or something like that?
Yeah. So you talk about reserves, right?
Yeah.
The trajectory of reserves is not sustainable, right?
I keyword stuffed that question, got all the big topics into one. So now you
so
get to weed through this.
Let me word vomit here.
Yeah.
Again, the budget's going to be fine, right? You're seeing the reset, if you will, the drawdown on reserves.
Right.
Intentionally drawing down on reserves. Decisions should be difficult. I guess, I don't like difficult decisions. Nobody does, but I understand that logic, right? Things become too easy, right? You become affluent, if you will.
Yep, right.
When the car breaks down, are you going to fix it? You're going to fix it yourself? Are you going to take it to the shop? You're going to start riding a bike, right? I mean, those are decisions that nobody wants to make. So again, it's not sustainable to keep subsidizing our budget with reserves. I mean, no entity can do that.
Right.
I could never do that in my household. The city can't. So again, there's going to have to be some
absolutely long-term
sustainable cuts. And again, whether that's through attrition, some like the speed in which we're going. Some people think we should slow down. I'm of the mindset, through attrition is probably the better route to go.
Right.
When positions become available, you reassess. Do we need this? We talked about even with the, probably recently somewhat of the city manager position, the assistant city manager position, and that's going to be a debate that we're going to have here, I think in March sometime when that gets posted, right? Are we going to actually hire this position, or is that going to go to cost savings? Right. I very intentionally asked, I think Alderman Blessam had said, hey, let's put this after the election. Tom Joyce, is this something you need? And that's what we need to hear. We need to hear from staff. Yeah. We need to ask those opinions, right? And there are people would say, well, this what we're here to do. It's like, but we need to know, what does this organization need? You're the ones in the weeds. I'm a guy who shows up every 2 weeks to vote on things, right? And then you do all the homework in between. You get the agendas. You talk with staff. You're given that arbitrary information to make an opinion on. But we need to hear from staff. Hey, what do we have a vision for this community? Yeah. How do we get there? You're the hired professionals. How do we get there? Do you need this, or can you do without, or can it be reworked? Can it be an assistant to the city manager? Does it need to be an assistant city manager? Right. And, just a couple wordsmiths, but very different positions. Yep. Very different positions. So, and again, so back to your question, is this where economic development comes into play? Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Again, we talk about growing the pie. And here's the problem, in my opinion, with I'll say our community, but society. Nobody wants to invest, right? Because they want it now. Yep. Because we've got a phone that if I need to find a place to eat, I can get it now. Yep. If I want to know what 1,567,000, I don't have to write it down on a piece of paper. I can put it into my phone and I can get it now. So to me, these things are investments. When you talk about economic development, they're investments. We're not going to get our money back for this long. That's how an investment works. Yeah. That's a long-term deal. It's a long-term deal. When you talk about, one of the things Renaissance Zone, right? Which is, it's going to be interesting. When you talk about, I'll pick on Kyler. He's running, right? Yeah. And I shouldn't say pick on him, right? You should. Kyler came in and gave us, in a public forum, said, I support. He was very vocal on supporting a Renaissance Zone application for a place that he worked. Is he going to maintain that level of support for the system and for that program when it's not his employer, right? And I'm not calling him out. I'm not trying to, but it's going to be something that's going to come up. It's going to be something that you got to answer to. You're under the microscope no matter what you're doing. Right. Yeah. So again, if opinions change, people change. People get more information, and that's one thing too. Is that. And this is not. This is to anybody running, right? And even to myself. It's like you get in, like I'm gonna just. I'm coming there, gunslinger. Here we go. I'm gonna change everything. I've got opinions. Also, you get in there, and be like, this works a lot different than I thought. Right. This isn't as black and white. This isn't just making a couple of decisions and here you go. It's steering a ship. Right. Yeah. And you've got to change the direction, right? And when it came to economic development, which has been a hot button issue with sales tax. I was the one who started that. I was the one who introduced the ordinance that allowed the city to get into the economic development world, to have to fill those gaps, right? Yeah. Because when I talk about all these different organizations picking up and carrying their weight and carrying, their load of water, carrying their bucket of water to move our community forward, I believe there were gaps that the city could fill as well. Yep. Should it be to the tune of 15% of a penny? Should it be more or less? That's up for debate, and then the council will, and that's one of the issues that I expect to take a turn. Yeah. When I'm no longer an advocate for, but again, that's fine then too. But that's also, again, if you don't look to learn from your past, you're doomed to repeat it, right? That's one thing. When I first got on council, we talked about you see these too high spikes in property taxes in 18-19. Well, that's because our budget was heavily subsidized with sales tax. I see. Then the bottom fell out. I see. Yep. Well, then what happens? Well, you either cut everything, right? or you have to find a sustainable level of revenue, which is property tax.
Yep.
And that's where sales tax, to me, it was like, hey, if we can put a little bit towards some of these things, whether it was, facade improvement programs, again, people talk about way, and again, just caveat all that stuff. All that stuff wasn't stuff that council or staff cooked up. That came from the IEDC report, the International Economic Development Committee report.
I see.
That was a paid study by city before my time. That report came out, I think, the year that I got elected.
I see.
Prior to me getting elected, was the IEDC report, and that was. Then we put the white page groups together, and you had, I think, Tim Mahalik steered that committee that put, hey, these are the deliverables. These are the things that this community should invest in and move forward. So we carried that. We picked it up, said, okay, well, how do we do it? We identified a revenue source. We identified the projects. What can we move forward? What things can we do for our community that this committee, that we paid for, said to do. So again, it's been, 8 years, 9 years now since that report. In my opinion, maybe time to do another one.
Right.
Maybe time, and whether that's external or internally. And we kind of did that with the Economic Development Committee, and for whatever it's worth. I mean, that was a little bit of a waste of time, in my opinion. A little bit of showboating, but again, we sat through those committees because, again, those committees, that's the difficult part, right? For anybody coming in to be on these things. And that's the most difficult part about anybody that's running. You will run your idea, you'll have ideas, and you will be told your idea is not going to be the prevailing one.
Yeah.
What do? You pick up, you move on, and you make whatever decision council made the best possible, version of what the council's going to do.
That's fair.
And that's all you can do. You don't sit there and whine about it.
Right. Yep.
You just move forward. The sidewalk thing we talked about earlier. Okay, guess what? You got 2 years.
Right.
I don't have sidewalks, to be honest with you. I don't have sidewalks in my neighborhood.
Wow.
But if I had a sidewalk, or if my mom's got a sidewalk, hey, Mom, you got 2 years to do it now.
Yeah,
I mean, it is what it is. Hey, it's
take the extra time.
Yeah, take the extra time. I mean, there's no hurry.
Yeah.
Somebody trips and falls, sue the city, right? Yeah. They didn't get it done in enough time. We talked about it. So again, the city's in a good spot. You threw a lot of stuff at me, but I'm trying to work through all of it. But again, we talk about the pig iron plant. We talk about those things, growing, the tax base, growing. We talk about Sunset Boulevard, right? And again, that was another issue that got really blown up and blown out of proportion.
I want to interrupt you on the Sunset.
Go for it.
Because there's a bigger question that I have that kind of ties back down to Sunset, or it can, depends on your viewpoint. With economic development, what is the best route? Because you have, Kyler responded, Renaissance program, yes, less favorable towards facade program. Both programs are economic development type programs. So that's one way for the city to invest in it. There's the much talked about TIFs and stuff like that. That's one way for the city to invest in economic development. Some will agree or some will disagree. Then you have the situation like Sunset Boulevard, where getting into paving roads in developments is going to be a contentious thing if that's truly how it's perceived by the public. But going and paving that road would open a lot of economic development on North Hill area. It would be on that specific plot, which is going to help that landowner, but it's probably also going to go into other areas of North Hill as big companies come in, other people will follow. What is, when you talk about economic development, what is the best path forward on that? And I know it's going to be situation based, but from a contract, from a viewpoint, how is economic best done by an organization like the city?
So I'm gonna little call back, I think is what it's called, to earlier in our conversation. When Scott Samuelson asked me to meet with him at City Hall, he asked me, he says, Paul, what is economic development? I said, depends who you ask, when you ask him.
Exactly.
And he says, that's pretty much what Webster's definition is.
Yeah.
Depends whatever your community needs at any given point in time.
Okay.
It might change tomorrow.
Right.
We put the facade improvement program together.
Yep.
If it runs its course, obviously it was focused on Central Business District, downtown area, trying to revitalize, our historical area where we're seeing investment with buildings down there. When you talk about, having to bore a water line in just to get fire suppression at $75,000 to $100,000, it's like, well, I get real uninterested in a project down there real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do we lighten that impact on individuals that want to do these projects? Again, that was a program that was put into place, again, out of the IEDC report. It was cited in there. if that project has run its course, which had been talked about at the Renaissance Zone Review Board, which handles the facade improvement program applications, there was a discussion to sunset that program and to step that down. Oh, obviously, Alderman Blessum kind of fast tracked that a little bit, which is fine. Again, we're gonna see that wind down, but you can't deny its impact. There's been more investment into downtown than there has been in the last, I'll say 5 years, 6 years, than there has been in the last 50 years.
Right.
Must be doing something, when you talk about Sunset Boulevard, my discussion, I made the motion to move that forward, and which could the motion have been phrased better? I'll take some maybe some flack on that and say, okay, it could have been, we were going all different directions in that meeting, but I was very clear prior to making the motion that, hey, if I'm going to direct city staff to do this, we're going to get another crack at this. Whether it's identifying funding sources, how this is going to look, we're going to get another crack and discussion at this.
So your intent was not that we're going to go and pass it. It's going
pave the road. No, I did not. I did not. Which was absolutely cited by another council member. I'll be very clear on that.
Yeah.
That in the comments, the city greenlit a $1.6 million check for someone to go. If they bring a paving company back in the spring, we can't do anything to stop them, and the city's on the hook. That's a load of BS.
Okay.
And it's very difficult for me to not use the unabbreviated version of that. Because it's unfortunate because that individual sat in that meeting. Some people like to stir the pot, right? So, but I was very clear that, hey, we're going to get another crack at this. And we have great city staff to the point where they're going to the table, hey, what does this look like? Do we do a 5-year TIF? Do we do a 5-year TIF? That's probably the best avenue to go.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to go through the county, doesn't have to go through the school board, things like that, or park board. I can't remember which one now has to sign off and which one kind of just has to go with us. Do you do that? Do you do a combination of a TIF, a special assessment district? What infrastructure, is there infrastructure that the city should pay for? If the city's going to take it, build it, lights, we're going to want it built to our standard. That parlays itself into construction costs for development. The city requires sidewalks to be put in by a contractor, and then we take them over, into the right of way, and they hand them over, right? Well, how do utility companies do it? Utility companies, you pay for it up front, whether that's MDU, XL, whatever it is, and then they reimburse you at the end of because they have customers, right? Should the city be doing something like that? All discussions that have to happen in order to get through the weeds, to get through the details, right? Just to sit, to my opinion, when we made that motion on Sunset, I saw where it was going. I said, we're just going to say no. And then we go back and some of the individuals that say no are going to say, city's damn hard to work with.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because we don't want to have conversations. Because we don't want to have difficult conversations because we're afraid of how they'll be perceived.
Yeah.
I really don't care how they're perceived.
Right.
What is the truth? The truth is we greenlit the conversation to happen. Go work with this developer. Go work with this landowner.
Right.
How is this going to look? How is this palatable? No one's going to sign a $1.6 million check for a road to be paved on private property. It's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
I wouldn't vote for that.
Yeah.
But they come back and say, hey, we can use these funds to pay for our side of the infrastructure, or we can, maybe there's a grant program that has to come for other developers, and maybe it should be. Maybe it should set a new precedent.
Yeah.
But just to sit there and say we haven't done it like this before is, in my opinion, irresponsible and lazy.
Yeah.
We have to have these conversations and move forward. Again, could the motion have been said differently and been clear? But we had identified funding source. Hey, if there is funding that needs to be available for this, let's identify it as, infrastructure, sales tax. And I immediately had conversations with City Finance Director Lakefield. He's like, yeah, we'll work through it. He says, these are kind of my opinions on how this should be worked and how this should look. Yeah. Again, if you build it, they will come, right? You hear that stuff, North Hill. But
does that bleed if it did move forward? It's kind of talking about the issue there in a bigger scale. If it did move forward, is that economic development?
Is that economic development?
Is paving a road like that in hopes that it gets development? And I'm not trying to put you on the hot seat there with that question. It's not a trick question in my mind. It probably is a trick question, but I'm not intending it as a trick question. My question is economic development switching gears? You kind of talked about it. It's what it is, what the city needs at that time. That's what economic development is.
Oh, absolutely. When you look at, let's just say, and again, I've talked with when we talk about a 5-year TIF, you talk about if that area got built out and the city made, $1 million investment, the city would make that money back. Again, that's the idea of an investment.
Yeah.
You're paying for something up front to recoup more at the end. When I was a kid, my parents, and again, this is when interest rates were kind of like they are now, you always put your money into a CD.
Right, yeah.
It was a 6-month CD.
Yeah.
It was whatever it was. Well, what if I need that? My dad said, well, tough.
Yeah.
You don't have it.
Right.
I said, but you'll be happy that you got an extra $200 at the end of the day when your money's in a CD.
Right.
Yeah, if we pay for some of these things and do some of these things, I'm not saying roads, I'm talking whether it's a facade improvement program. Yes, you're foregoing those funds for a bigger payout on the end, whether that's a higher tax base, whether that's more options, quality of life, right? It can come down to cutting grass is economic development, beautification, right? I mean, anybody that tells you that those things don't drive quality of life are lying to you. You want to go to a place. You're telling me a story about your road trip before the show, right?
Yep.
You go into those places and it's like, I don't want to be here.
Yep. Absolutely.
But if you go in there and you felt welcome and these places were well taken care of, well maintained, that drives economic development. It does. It makes people want to invest in those areas, in those communities.
Absolutely.
So again, it's and I'm probably giving you a political answer in the sense of it just depends. But it does, and again, those are the conversations that you have to have. And I've had some pushback. One of the old developers, who I've got a lot of respect for. I don't know if I want to say his name or not,
fine.
but because Paul, hey, I've done development in this, and he's long in the tooth. He's not doing it anymore. He said, I did this, but I had to pay for this.
Right.
And I said, hey, just because you had to do it doesn't mean the next generation should have to do it. Maybe there's a better way of doing it. And I'm not saying it was right. I'm not saying it's wrong. But what I'm saying is we have to have those conversations in order to move it along. No change is going to happen if we just sit here and just sit on our hands and say, well, I don't know, that's what we've done before. I guess let's just keep doing it that way.
It's true.
We got to have some uncomfortable conversations.
Absolutely. Well, maybe 3 months from now, 3.5 months from now, we'll get the unpolitical answer.
Yeah, maybe. I think it'll be the same. I really think it'll be the same because again, it just depends on where you are at any given point in time.
I agree.
And like I say, is Sunset's an opportunity. It's an unprecedented. It's a road that we have utilized via the property owner for a long time. And again, this is not a conversation that's new.
Right.
This came up probably 2020, 2019, 2021, where we talked about maintaining that. We had some costs there, and I said, hey. Excuse me. We had that for emergency access before the bypass was up and all those things. I said, well, let's close it.
Right.
And Public Works Director Jonas at the time says, close it. I don't care. It's less work for us to do.
Right. Yeah.
You can go around on the bypass. Right. I mean, but I've always known that to be a road. I've always known that to be a dirt road in town. We used to mow lawns up in that neighborhood when I was a kid. And that was a road that we always took.
Right.
It's always been there. Does that mean that we have to maintain it? It has to stay there? No. Absolutely not. We could mothball that, put up do not cross and put up some, dead end, signs. But we have built a new high school up there. We've got Marketplace Foods up there. You've got development that's happening there. You want to be smart about it. And again, you just have to have the conversations. You have to have them in an open arena and a public forum and let people weigh in. So
it's good. Coming to a close here. Probably, I always say it's my last question, then there's like 5 more that come from it, but most likely last question. Your years on council, what do you want to be remembered by or as?
Man, that's a funny question. You start to as I kind of. I'll start with this. When I made the announcement that I wasn't going to run again, in my first council meeting was like a weight off my shoulders, right? Because there was no speculation, right? Yep. There's nothing. I can kind of be free. Like it's done. Even my wife didn't even know I put that post out. She's not on Facebook or whatever. Gotcha. She was like, she saw me on the news or I was working out the Y and sent her a picture of the news. She said, "Why are you on the news?" And I was like, I was about to mess with her and be like, "I'm running again." Yeah. But again, it's that weight off your shoulders, right? And when I look back on my time at council, the things that have been controversial. Yeah. You talk about COVID, right? We went through COVID, and we went through mask mandates, and I was of the opinion it's like, hey, private property, private businesses, let them choose. Don't mandate anything, and it wasn't a mandate that we were talking about at the time. It was a suggestion. I'm like, this isn't a mandate. I voted against it. Yeah. You talk about those things, freedom of choice. You talk about You talk about, when my dad got sick, I laugh at this one because I think about it every once in a while when I see old pictures, or even some of the pictures that are in City Hall. I grew my hair out. My dad had gotten cancer, so I was like, you know what, my hair's a little long. I'm going to grow it out. I'm going to donate it. That's something I had done in college. I'm going to donate it again. I got so much flack from some individuals who are actually involved in the city, like, you're a disgrace to the city, nice hair, you way to represent the city. I'm like, it's my hair.
Yeah.
I never see anybody talking about any of the females' hairs up here that are too long.
Yeah.
So, am I going to be remembered for having long hair? Am I going to be remembered? I just want to be remembered for a guy who was, again, had the best interest of the community involved, that wasn't worried about what people thought. I followed my true north. My compass was to make Minot pro-growth, pro-entrepreneurship, and to move the community forward. I was, yes, you concern yourself. That's the problem, right? We work on this annual basis,
right?
That we put a budget together for next year, and then we parlay that into, okay, we approve the budget. Guess what we're doing next month? We're getting ready for next year's budget,
right?
And that's important.
Yep.
That is very important. One of the top priorities you have. But you also have to view, what is Minot going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now? Those are the things that Minot, I don't believe, when I got on council, was concerned with. It was, how do we keep my neighbor happy for the next budget cycle?
Right.
Kept your property taxes low. We subsidize it with sales tax. We're good. And they could have coffee, right? They could go to the local watering hole and nobody's going to be pissed at them.
Yep, right.
To me, I didn't care about that as much. I was, how do we make this, how do we steer this ship, this cruise ship, how do we steer it in a direction that in 20 years from now, we're going to have a pig iron plant?
Right.
We're going to have a Costco, a Sam's Club. How are we going to get to those things?
Right.
That they don't happen. Anybody that thinks, if Kyler or Joan, or the mayor who's running again, think that they're going to come in and just say, hey, I'm going to change all of these things in one term. Right. That's not how it works. And again, I'm not saying that they think that. I'm not saying.
I hear you though.
I'm not saying they think that.
Any new member.
Yes, any new member that thinks that we're going to just change this trajectory long term.
Yep.
In one term is not going to happen. It is small incremental steps, and it is so hard. It's about accountability and showing up every day. And that's, I guess, to long-winded answer to your question, how do I want to be perceived as someone that just kept showing up, kept beating the same drum that, hey, these things are important. Yep. Competition in the marketplace. How do we open this up? How do we make this a level playing ground as much as we can for people to come in and make a life, right? Yep. I mean, I was I didn't have a, I was going to say something I shouldn't say. I didn't have anything, right? When my wife and I got started, we lived with my parents for the first 6 months. After we got married, we lived at her parents' lake cabin. We lived in a rental of my mom and dad's, until we bought our first house was, after we bought a place out at the lake, because we moved back to the boom. During the boom, everything was, crazy expensive.
Bad deal.
Yeah, and I wasn't in the oil field. I was starting a business, and again, we had just a lot of grit and determination. But then we bought an old flood house, and I knew how to do that. I grew up doing that stuff. We fixed it up. We gutted it. We went through the process. Actually, we were fixing it up, and Mike Murphy, city inspector, came by. My father-in-law was there dropping something off for me, and he says, Dan, what are you doing here? They knew each other. He says, this is on the list to get tore down. Oh, no. He says, well, you better not. You're going to have some really disappointed kids if they show up and the house is gone. The city didn't know at that time that we had bought it and had gone through the VA and whatnot. So, again, I just want to create opportunities for people. And that's all I've ever wanted to do is create opportunities. And I hope that we've done that. And again, whether it be the committees that I've served on, the alcohol review, the economic development committee, those are committees that I've always held the same approach. How do we make this pro-growth, pro-entrepreneurship? Somebody comes in, has an idea. This is a place where you can plant that seed and it will grow.
Absolutely. Very good. Well, I think that's such a good answer. I won't even ask another question. So really do appreciate you coming on today. It's been a good discussion for sure. Thank you for watching this episode of Minot Talk here at the Dakota. We'll be back this Thursday, 9 a.m. Be sure to like, subscribe. Stay tuned for more stuff coming your way. Thanks for watching. Have a great